Hello, scientists of Reddit. What's a scary science fact that the public knows nothing about? Story 1. Scientific literature conclusion on Alzheimer's disease and other neurodegenerative diseases in general is that the diseases start decades before the obvious symptoms and that we need to treat them at this stage. When you exhibit obvious symptoms, it's too late. Your brain is already mush. If you get diagnosed with Alzheimer's at 65, you had the disease since at least your early 40s, and you experienced very mild symptoms but didn't notice, and your brain fought like hell to compensate the deficit. When you get the diagnosis, your brain is already very severely damaged and will never recover from that deficit. Story 2. If your dog swims in a lake after receiving a spot on flea treatment, it absolutely decimates the invertebrate population. A large dog swimming in 8 Olympic swimming pools worth of water soon after treatment will leach enough neurotoxin to unalive 50% of the lake's invertebrate population within 48 hours. There's some awareness of this, but it's not being taken seriously enough. Story 3. The universe might be metastable, and at any moment a sphere of influence may spread. This can occur anywhere without warning. The sphere will spread, and inside of it will literally rewrite all of physics and chemistry. This can make life impossible inside. Literally, an atom that is part of you can do this at any time. Your dog can become a sphere of influence, or your carpet, even the atmosphere, and there is absolutely no way to stop it. Story 4. Surschupfferden. There's this phenomenon called cosmic horizon, I think, which says that due to the accelerating expansion of the universe, a curtain-like horizon closes in on us, making it unable to see anything beyond it, therefore making it impossible to ever get there or share information with a place beyond it. This will take place when none of us are here anymore. But the thought of an event horizon like from a black hole closing in on this world and every part of the universe makes me feel scared. Story 5. Humans rely on evaporating sweat to stay cool. If humidity gets too high, relatively low heat can unalive humans. The equivalent of 95 Fahrenheit or 35 Celsius at 100% relative humidity can unalive even healthy humans. This is called a wet bulb event. By 2050, scientists predict multiple wet bulb events in the North China Plain. Approximately 400 million people live in the North China Plain. Story 6. Prions. Misfolded proteins that cause a cascade of protein misfoldings that lead to amyloid plaque buildups, resulting in uncontrollable neurodegeneration that is fatal in 100% of cases within 2 years. There is no cure. We don't understand what causes it. We don't understand the mechanism of the misfolding cascade. We don't even fully understand the structure of the misfolded proteins. It could, in theory, happen to anyone at any time. And there's no way to tell until you start showing symptoms, at which point you might have 18 months to live if you're lucky, the last 6 of which will be intensely unpleasant. Story 7. Antibiotics have been abused and misused for so long that various bacteria strains have started to get resistance to them. What used to be a treatable infection might soon become deadly because we are unable to treat it with the antibiotics we have today. There is research to try and find other ways to treat antibiotic-resistant bacteria. But until then, please use prescribed antibiotics until they are finished, not until you feel better. If unused, do not flush them down the toilet or put them in the bin. Give it to a pharmacy so they can discard them correctly. And only use antibiotics when necessary. Some countries give them willy-nilly, while others are more conservative. Story yarn. Everyone knows about scurvy, but the reason it's so terrifying is usually less known. You see, scar tissue is not permanent. The process to build and maintain scar tissue is constantly ongoing. When you become vitamin C deficient, your scar tissue starts being reabsorbed by your body, opening up any and all old wounds. If you have ever had surgery, those internal incisions will open back up. Fortunately, it doesn't take a lot of vitamin C and it's abundant in our food sources, but it's still a little creepy that you could just start falling apart without it. Story Nachorn. Helium. Fun for party balloons. Everybody likes a squeaky voice. Except helium is a vital component of various high-tech devices, such as MRIs. Helium is also light enough that Earth's gravity cannot contain it. And we are running out. Not today, not tomorrow, but we are frivolously wasting it when we should be jealously hoarding it. And eventually we won't have any left. And a lot of our wonderful technology will suddenly stop working. Story 10. There is a gravitational anomaly in space called the Great Attractor, which is pulling everything within the Virgo and Hydro Centaurus superclusters towards it. It lies 150 to 250 million light years from the Milky Way, which itself is being pulled towards it too. The scary part is that, relative to us, this anomaly lies within the same plane as our own galaxy, making it very difficult to observe. Essentially, we have almost no concrete idea of what it is. I don't know if this is scary, it's kind of cool to be honest. A fun little science mystery to figure out that doesn't actually really affect us. Right now, at least. I don't know, it seems like just one step below heat death of the universe in terms of like cosmic fears. Story 11. On the flip side of the Great Attractor is the Boots Void. The Boots Void, sometimes called the Great Void, is a huge spherical region of space that contains very few galaxies. It's approximately 700 million light years from Earth and located near the constellation Boots, which is how it got its name. The supervoid measures 250 million light years in diameter, representing approximately 0.27% of the diameter of the observable universe, which itself is a daunting 93 billion light years across. Its volume is estimated at 236,000 sm cubed, making it the largest known void in the universe. At first, astronomers were only able to find 8 galaxies across the expanse, but further observations revealed a total of 60. Now, while that might seem like a lot, it would be like stumbling upon only 60 objects across a region larger than continental United States, and that's just in 2 dimensions. According to astronomer Greg Aldering, the scale of the void is such that if the Milky Way had been in the center of the Boots Void, we wouldn't have known that there were other galaxies until the 1960s. Looking at the volume of the Boots Void, it should contain about 10,000 galaxies, when considering that the average distance between galaxies elsewhere in the universe is just a few million light years. But the question is why and how this void came to be. There hasn't been enough time since the universe began for mere gravitational forces to clear out a space of that size. There's a theory that suggests that supervoids are caused by the intermingling of smaller mini-voids, like soap bubbles coming together. But a more maybe creepier explanation is that the Boots Void could be the result of an expanding Kardashev 3-scale civilization. As the colonization bubble expands outwards from its home system, the civilization dims each star and subsequently each galaxy by blanketing them in a Dyson shell. This might also explain why the void has such a nice spherical shape. Oh, and also we're seeing a snapshot of the void 700 million years ago. A lot could have happened in 700 million years that we just cannot see or know due to the inherent speed of light. Now, this is spooky space stuff that is spooky. The idea that a civilization more advanced than our own could be out there. Ooh. And also somehow creating this huge void. I mean, I say somehow because I don't understand it, but astronomers have a better idea, I guess. Also, boots. Probably not the correct pronunciation. There's an umlaut on top of the second O, but I just do my best. I speak English. That's it. Story 12. If you live in the Netherlands and your house is older than, let's say, 100 years, and you have not renovated your plumbing, chances are fairly high that you can get lead poisoning. It is impossible for water treatment companies to pinpoint where they are and how many building plans do not include the plumbing schematics. So check your pipes for lead. They can do harm, especially to children. Story 13. Cancer geneticist here. Most cases of cancer that are sequenced generally just denote the prognosis or how long a person has to live rather than treatment options. People always say, let's cure cancer. However, this simplifies cancer as though it is only one disease. It's far more complicated than that. I studied at one of the largest cancer hospitals in the world where the motto is to make cancer history, but the only obtainable goal is to make it chronic. We study and research as much as possible, but every cancer requires different research. And unfortunately, the powers that be often prohibit funding and proficient research. It's work I am passionate about, but also a broken system that is infuriating to work in. Story 14. I'm in the UK. About 17% of people have fetal alcohol syndrome. As much as 17% of us are developmentally disabled simply because prior to the late 90s, a large proportion of British mothers drank during pregnancy. 41%. Thankfully, the prevalence rate has been falling fast since the late 90s when all this research was published, but it's terrifying to see how much of an effect FASD is having on society. Story 15. A repeat of an earlier post, but it fits so well. The original nuclear bombs leveled the cities they detonated over. yet they are considered puny by today's standards. The most powerful nuclear bomb ever created, the Tsar Bomba, had an explosive yield 3,000 times more powerful than the original nuclear bombs, and its power was calculated to be more than 10 times the combined power of every single munition used in World War II. That includes every bullet, every grenade, every artillery shell fired, every bomb dropped, and of course the two nuclear bombs. It was detonated 4 kilometers from the ground over the remote Severny Island, yet still completely destroyed towns within a couple hundred kilometers of the blast and broke windows as far away as Copenhagen, Denmark. The shockwave from the blast circled the globe 9 times. The plane that dropped it was given a 50-50 chance of survival. Yet the bomb was originally designed to be twice as powerful. Look, not to sound like a hippie, but I don't get it. Why do we need these bombs? What's the point here? What's the end game? Yes, let us destroy our enemy. That will help us conquer the land that becomes unusable. So it's not that, so it's just sending a message? I don't know. Sounds like high school bully behavior to me, but bombs that buy, like what's the point? It's just, I don't know. Story 16. Soil science adjacent researcher here. We are degrading, polluting, and losing our topsoil at such a rate that we may not be able to produce enough food to feed everyone within 50 to 60 years, let alone what impacts climate change may bring to bear on our food supply. And the U.S. government's crop insurance programs and incentives all reinforce the bad practices while discouraging regenerative practices. These bad policies are extremely hard to change because of lobbying from the major agribusiness companies who make money off of these short-sighted policies. Our food supply is further threatened by our agricultural overdependence on aquifer water, which is not being replenished, making it an unsustainable source of water. If the aquifers are overdrawn, depleted, or polluted, we hit a hard wall of water scarcity, and we will have no backups to address the problem with. The drawdown of the aquifers also causes land subsidence, which causes costly infrastructure and building damage. The general public does not realize the impending crisis that will be caused by the confluence of these factors. Story 17. There's a solar event known as a CME, or coronal mass ejection. It occurs very frequently on a cosmic timescale. Every few decades to centuries, there's a decently sized one. Why are they scary? A CME is a massive burst of radiation easily able to fully envelop the Earth in its path, and it's the equivalent of a non-stop EMP barrage. The last time a big one hit Earth was when we had telegraph lines for communications, and they spontaneously caught fire. In today's world, with everything running on electricity, when the next big one hits, we'll have at most a few days warning, and it would be a literal apocalypse movie scenario with planes going down due to their whole electrical system frying. Nobody's vehicles starting untold billions in fire damage would wreak havoc everywhere, and the machines we depend on to help would be similarly fried. Some stuff would be unaffected, being parked in deep concrete roof parking garages and the like, but our entire infrastructure would be useless for years. It would literally send us into a mini dark age while people try to get things working again. Recovery would take decades to centuries. Story 18. Botox is made from botulinum toxin. This toxin is produced by the bacterium Clostridium botulinum and is considered to be one of the most poisonous, lethal substances known to mankind. The toxin is a neurotoxin that blocks nerve signals to muscles. Consequently, it prevents muscles injected with Botox from contracting, tensing, so they become weak or paralyzed, thus improving the appearance of wrinkles and fine lines. Fortunately, though, Botox is only injected in small targeted doses and is considered extremely safe as long as it's made and provided by a licensed professional. Story 19. Our food is becoming less nutritious. Plants take in CO2 gas and convert that into carbohydrates through photosynthesis. The increase in atmospheric CO2 concentration we have caused means that plants are producing more carbohydrates, sugars, and structural carbs like cellulose. However, the mineral, micronutrient, and protein content of plants is not increasing. Plants today contain more carbs than plants 100 years ago generally. This may be a contributing factor to the obesity epidemic, since more total calories need to be consumed in order to reach total nutrient requirements. Story 20. I've got 3 for you. 1. Rabies. Once symptomatic rabies has a nearly 100% fatality rate. The only options are the rabies vaccine and immunoglobulin therapy, which again must be administered before any symptoms. 2. Gamma ray bursts, henceforth referred to as GRBs. GRBs are a rare phenomenon emitted from the poles of rapidly spinning supernovae and hypernovae. In the event of a direct hit from suitably close, which is actually really, really far, all life on Earth would be wiped out. The facing side would be annihilated instantly, while the trailing side would die quickly due to the conditions on Earth no longer being suitable to support life. And there is absolutely nothing we can do about it. 3. Runaway global warming. There are many stores of greenhouse gases, namely carbon dioxide and methane all over the place. But the conditions required to keep those gases trapped are delicate. The worst part, it may already be too late to stop it. Even if humanity immediately ceased all greenhouse gas emissions and put every single resource we have into carbon sequestration. Story 21. Here's a few scary medical science facts regarding CPR that you won't often hear in your first aid or CPR class. I only learned this stuff after schooling to become an EMT. What's the success rate of CPR? The average person assumes 75% or greater. In reality, it's barely 10. It's one of the first things they told us in training because all new people have way too high of an expectation of the effectiveness of CPR. It can be very depressing when you're doing everything you were trained and aren't getting the results you think you should be getting. The time from collapse to administration of a shock via an AED is absolutely paramount. They say the chances of survival drop 10% per minute. Oh, and rescue breaths. If you're not being very, and I mean very careful, you'll cause gastric dissension. You'll literally be blowing up their stomach and they will vomit. Then there's the cracks and crackles. If done right, it'll sound and feel like you're breaking every rib in little old lady Nelson's chest. You're likely not its cartilage and other bits shifting. Although if you're a bit too vigorous, you may very well break a rib or two. But hey, they're already dead, so it doesn't matter. They'd rather be alive with a broken rib than dead. Story 22. There are some destinations in space that are considered dead ends, where the expansion of the universe between you and them is so great that even traveling at light speed, you'll never reach your destination. Worse, you can't turn back after a certain point either because home is receding faster than you can fly to. You're just trapped in the endless void between two unreachable destinations forever, and no one will ever be able to reach you for the exact same reason. Okay, I'm not personally scared by this, but I don't know, someone might be. Captain Kirk. Story 23. Haven't seen this one yet. Insects are going extinct. We have lost a significant chunk since the 80s. I think it was around 20%. Mozzies are going up because of course, but just about everything else is going. Wasn't until I read this that I realized that, as a kid in the 90s, I used to see butterflies all the time. Dragonflies. My house used to get invaded by Christmas beetles every year. Not so much. These days, I might see only 1 or 2 Christmas beetles in December, if any at all. When I was a kid, I remember finding 8 in my house in a single night. Same house. Story 24. The Cascadia Subduction Zone, CS, runs off the coast of Northern California to southern Canada and ruptures about every 250 to 350 years. We know this from the geological record. The last rupture was in January 1700, and there were written records from Japan of a tsunami that resulted from an earthquake on the other side of the Pacific. This zone is still active and is likely to rupture in the next 100 years, resulting in a Mag 9 plus earthquake that impacts the west coast from northern Cali to southern Canada. Edit. These massive earthquakes along subduction zones are called megathrust earthquakes. Story 25. Some forms of anesthesia don't numb you to pain. They make you forget that you felt it. That reminds me of that early anesthetic for children didn't actually stop pain and just paralyze them. The doctors didn't believe the kids describing the pain, and it wasn't until a child of a doctor was able to recount in detail the medical procedure and how he was cut up and what caused the pain that they stopped using it. This is all form memory from a college neuroscience class, so I don't recall the specifics. Story 26. I don't know if I'd call it science per se or call myself a scientist, but I'm a formal funeral director. And one of the first things you learn in your actual funeral science classes is that people over a certain body fat percentage will start a literal grease fire in your crematory oven if you don't bake them at a proper temperature and duration. Cold start low and slow is key. Story 27. Most cosmetic items that say they contain ingredients like different plant extracts have just enough to say that it's there but not enough to actually help you. Like a few grams in a batch that's a couple thousand gallons. If it isn't an FDA-regulated component, like for example salicylic acid in a shampoo for people with dandruff, there is literally nothing stopping companies from putting virtually undetectable amounts of ingredients into stuff just to be able to say it's there. Story 28. Topsoil loss is pretty scary for the medium long term. This glosses over heterogeneity, e.g., we're burning through soil in the Midwest much faster than other parts of the U.S. Interestingly enough, a lot of damage from the Dust Bowl is still in place, but we're relying on more input-intensive methods to eke out results. Fertilizer runoff is also causing an anoxic dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico. The nutrients feeds algae, which has a population explosion and rots en masse. Some are holding out for usable soil opening up at high altitudes, e.g. Canada, Siberia, with climate change, but at least near term that isn't too promising, given that it will generally be poorer soil, e.g. less phosphate, and melting permafrost won't be too reliable for quite a while. While vertical farming and the like is making advances, as I understand it, most of what's practical to grow tends to be inefficient calorie-wise. Story 29. The human genome is riddled with mutations. Some were passed down from your parents, some occurred during DNA replication, and others as a result of DNA damage from the environment, smoking, UV light, etc. Most of these mutations are harmless. Some will be repaired, some won't, but others will be in cancer suppressor genes or osagenes. In fact, you may have cancerous cells growing in your body right now. Story 30. During World War II, when America was working on the first nuclear bombs, they hadn't finalized the math on whether or not a nuclear explosion would cause an ongoing reaction with the atmosphere, thereby igniting it and eradicating Earth. Story 31. In Canada, there are many buildings under-designed for snow loads due to being designed under the previous revisions of the building code. Snowdrift loading due to different height roofs, large RTUs or solar panels, etc., were not factored into the design for the roof structures. A lot of jobs tend to increase in scope after an analysis of the roof capacity is performed. Story 32. A particle found in the core of a neutron star can convert normal matter into what is called strange matter, and it can infect all matter in the universe because it can exist outside of neutron stars. A single particle is enough to change Earth into an unrecognizable planet along with us. Story 33. Well, I'm not a scientist, but I have an interesting one about the New Madrid Fault. In 1812, it faulted, causing the Mississippi to flow north for a short time. When there's an earthquake in that area that is substantial, it shakes the river plain. The river plain is more like jello than solid land. This causes it to come loose, resulting in sand blows. If you're ever in an area, you can still see areas of sand that have been pushed up for these. There's also Indian legends of this fault being active, so it's odd it's been dormant for so long. Story 34. I keep wondering why so many people, including in this post, are scared of cosmic changes that might eradicate life, Earth, and all existence in an instance such as vacuum decay. Like if it ever happens, we will never know about it. We won't see it coming, and we won't actively experience it or anything after, since when it happens, it's already over. Aren't the scary things you actually have to deal with, like lasting disease or social collapse, rather than an instant wipeout that doesn't really concern anyone anymore the moment it's done? Story 35. Physical oceanography. The world's climate is driven by the meridional overturning circulation, what you might have heard as the global conveyor belt. Essentially, this is the formation of cold and salty deep water masses near the poles North Atlantic and Antarctica that sinks to the bottom of the oceans, that then upwells in regions like the Indian Ocean and subtropical Pacific. No deep water formation, no upwelling, no deep water formation, no movement of heat on a larger scale, theoretically, in the oceans. The heat capacity of the oceans is orders of magnitude greater than that of the atmosphere. If that heat isn't moving around, the world's climate rapidly changes. Thanks to the melting of the Greenland ice sheet, there's going to be a lot fresher water in the North Atlantic. No salty water, no deep water formation, no deep water formation, no conveyor belt, no conveyor belt, no Gulf Stream, or anything else driven by geostrophic motion. Climate apocalypse. Have fun! Story 36. The Yellowstone caldera has migrated over millions of years due to tectonic plates moving. This has left a giant scar across all of southern Idaho that can be seen from space. You can see it for yourself on Google Earth. It shows just how big the caldera is and a small idea of how bad an eruption would be. What scientific fact scares you to your bones? Story 1. The dark forest theory as a solution to the Fermi paradox. If the universe is so big, why haven't we detected alien life yet? Dark forest theory says that paranoid advanced alien civilizations may find it convenient to destroy new life forms like us, simply so there's no chance we're a threat to them in the future. For an advanced alien civilization, destroying Earth would be as simple as sending an object our way at near light speed. And so the reason we haven't detected alien life yet may be because A, they've learned to advance their technology cautiously and quietly, or B, they were detected and killed off. Any day now, the various emissions of humankind may be picked up by that paranoid alien race who could be preparing to may have already sent an object our way at near light speed. Story 2. There exists on this planet a predator so perfect that it has not had to evolve in any major way for over 150 million years. It has existed in its current basic design for longer than there has been a human species. They don't even need to hunt, just wait for prey to stupidly blunder into their path, then injects a venom that literally liquefies the internal organs. F.U. spiders. Story 3. The Fermi paradox. The conditions to support life are extremely common in the universe, so radio silence can mean a few things. Most civilizations die out due to their own actions. Most civilizations are hiding due to a few that will preemptively attack anyone foolish enough to reveal their location. There exists an inhibitor race that destroys all civilizations that advance to a certain level. Physical limits on technology do not allow long-range travel or communication. We live under a net-blocking outside communication and are being observed. We live in a simulation. None of those possibilities is comforting. Story 4. Look at your hands. A significant percentage of the atoms that make up your hands and everything else in your body were forged in the heart of stars, which then exploded. We, as in our atoms, were not in the stars so much as we were the stars themselves. We're all remnants of long-dead stars. Stars like our sun are pretty much our grandchildren. We were stars, and then we were supernovas. It's funny to realize that our bodies were once pieces of something that overwhelmingly powerful. Story 5. The movie Contagion. The fact that it's actually a fairly realistic presentation of how a virus could spread throughout our planet and the efforts it takes for a cure to come about. Kind of a nutshell. But you get a virus that continent hops infects people who can die within 4,872 hours, and it takes governments 4 months to even get to a test-worthy cure, which isn't meant for mass consumption at that time. The amount of death during that timeline is ridiculous. And in general, the fact that every human being on this planet could eventually be killed by something we can't even see, but with a microscope, is mind-bending. Then to add to that, the idea of an asteroid or meteorite crashing into Earth, which happens to contain organic material from another planet that could have potentially supported some form of life. But that organic material is enough to contain a virus within our ecosystem and infect people is crazy. Or there are a handful of viruses so hot only a few live versions exist in very locked-down laboratories in multiple countries. I believe like smallpox. Granted, the United States, I think, has over 300 million cures for it if an outbreak were to spread. But it is still scary as crap that could somehow someday get released. Story 6. The scale of the universe and its emptiness, yet how much there is out there, are both insane. It's terrifying, yet amazing at the same time. Take a square millimeter, or basically a grain of sand. Place a meter, or about a yard or 3 feet away from you. If there wasn't anything blocking your view, that grain of sand would be covering thousands of entire galaxies from your view. This is what the ultra-deep field from Hubble represents. The light from those galaxies took so much time to get here that when it left those galaxies, our solar system didn't even exist for another 8-9 billion years or so. But that's not just one spot in one direction. It surrounds us in every direction. You could place that grain of sand anywhere around you, and it would have the same effect. Story 7. The fact that we could get hit with a solar flare at any time, which has the potential to send us back into the 18th century. An entire hemisphere of the Earth could have all of its electronic equipment wiped out. Just imagine the consequences of such an event. A solar flare hit the U.S. in the mid-19th century. Fortunately, at the time, it was only the telegraph system that was affected since there weren't any electronic systems in place at the time. Telegraph lines were reported to burst into flames. It terrifies me to think what would happen if this happened to us. Living in a world dependent on electronics and electronic systems, it could be one of the most catastrophic events in history. Also, it's not like it'll be a short outage like after a bad storm or hurricane hits. It would take many months or even years to bring us back to where we were. The scarier part is the human reaction. Just look at what happens to communities when the power goes out for a day or two, like New York in 1977. Now just imagine that for an entire hemisphere. And keep in mind we're 1,000 times more dependent on electronic systems now than we were in 1977. And it's not a question of if, it's a question of when. Story 8. Gamma ray bursts. That's some scary crap. There was a supernova that happened 8,000 light years from Earth that was observed a few decades ago, I think. Supernovas fire off two gamma ray bursts in completely random directions, directly opposite each other when they happen. If one of the bursts from that supernova had just happened to hit Earth, it would have wiped out 70% of life on the planet in 10 seconds. A gamma ray burst could be heading towards Earth right now, and we would have no possible way to know because they approach at the speed of light. Story 9. Consciousness as an emergent property of the brain, hands down. It's part philosophy, part science. Well, philosophy that's consistent with scientific observation. Most people just assume our mind just exists somewhere. That somewhere being as a non-corporeal, undetectable entity inhabiting our body as in a soul, or floating somewhere else looking inward. Maybe some will think of it as interchangeable with the brain, but that's still not quite accurate. Consider the more likely fact that we are just the summation of the brain's activities. That we, our minds, do not exist in a technical sense. It is raining, but not rain. We are talking, but not speaking. We are math, but not numbers. We are the verb to the noun that is our brain. This has some interesting implications. When you couple this with hard determinism, you get the concept of humans as complex natural forces. I'm posting this here because I was introduced to this by listening to Skeptic's Guide to the Universe with an interview. I wish I could relocate about the subject. Without a doubt, I'm stepping over the bounds of what is strictly scientific fact, but I think it's the most freaky thing I've ever encountered with reasonable scientific backing. Story 10. Studies have found it is likely conscious decisions are not a factor in our actions, and that we create post hoc reasonings for the things we do. From early psychological theories to more modern MRI tests, the concept of free will is gradually moving from being seen as a mystery to being seen as an illusion. People can give false reasons or even convince themselves they carried out actions they did not and swear blindly that they did. They aren't lying, they genuinely believe this and recall it that way. This fact is especially scary for me because it makes you see everything going on in the real world in terms of this idea. Meaning the truly insane decisions being taken by certain people may not be influenced by logic as we know it at all. It raises the question of whether consciousness is truly real or necessary. Story 11. That all our senses are just waves converted into electric signals and then processed by our brain. But most of the time when the brain doesn't receive any signal, he just makes them up, and sometimes your brain decides to forget stuff or create memories. So basically, a big part of your life were just hallucinations made up by your brain. Maybe your mom or friend you see every week does not exist and died years ago, but your brain just decided to forget about that and makes you think they are still alive. Story 12. Memory transference and organ transplant recipients. I read somewhere that a man got a heart from a recently deceased who committed suicide by putting a bullet through his head. After the man received the heart transplant a while later, he went into his backyard, pulled out a shotgun, and put a bullet through his head the same way his donor did. Also wanted to mention that he did not know his donor, nor how he passed. Excerpt from Google search. The behaviors and emotions acquired by the recipient from the original donor are due to the combinatorial memories stored in the neurons of the donated organ. Heart transplants are said to be the most susceptible to cell memory where organ transplant recipients experienced a change of heart. Story 13. The idea that we may have missed the window to fully understand the universe. Example of the kind of window I'm talking about. We understand our place in the universe, and a lot of physics by looking at not just stars but other galaxies, how they move, what they do, etc. However, with the universe expanding, there will come a time when galaxies move so far apart that they are no longer inside the visible universe, and hence will be undetectable. Any sentient life at that time will be able to see only their own galaxy stars, and a lot of information on the true nature of the universe will be forever unobtainable. It's entirely possible that several such windows of opportunity to understand the true nature of reality have already closed, and we will never know they even existed in the first place. Our base ability to understand what reality really is may have already become physically impossible. Story 14. That evolution happened due to randomness. If matter can self-assemble into working intellect, it follows that we will eventually learn to organize matter into working intellect. Probably the first of this will be AI. Some people wonder if hard or strong AI is possible. With evolution and history as a guide, I can't shake the idea that it is not only inevitable, but closer than many people think. That should scare the crap out of everyone. If corporations developing AI are known for anything, it is being out of touch with ethics. So we could essentially be creating AI in an environment where the ethics surrounding it are about control and our own fears of being destroyed. We should be employing ethics at maximum to develop these ideas, but they seem so far-fetched no one gives a damn. Because we keep telling ourselves it is impossible, we will end up more likely creating an AI that hates us, and as Hollywood has shown, we barely make it out alive. Story 15. All of time has already happened, and your experience of time is just a matter of how small you are and how slowly you move. Since time is relative to the velocity and gravity from which it is observed, all of time has already been observed from somewhere. Brian Greene described it as a loaf which could be cut at infinite angles, the angle of the cut being the velocity and whatnot. Since time is a loaf and not some strange, constantly baking bread machine, from some angle at some speed, every single moment past and future has already happened. Story 16. This one's a bit hypothetical, but bear with me. There's a philosopher called Nick Bostrom who posits that we have the ability and inclination to create simulated universes like video games. And like video games, technology keeps evolving, as does artificial intelligence. In theory, we'll eventually create a universe with simulated beings so real that they'll not only believe that they're real, but given the inclination and ability, will eventually create their own simulated universe. In short, the inhabitants of every simulation will eventually create another simulation, barring an event that prevents said inhabitants from reaching that stage in their development, such as an extinction event. Where this gets creepy is that if you accept his theory as true, then the chances of us being the prime universe are astronomical, not just 1,000,000 to 1 or even 1,000,000,000 to 1. Imagine someone telling you to find one specific grain of sand in the Sahara Desert without telling you the region or even the country, and then stumbling across that one specific grain of sand on your first try by pure luck in the middle of a sandstorm, and you'll still be nowhere close. But you're starting to get an idea of just how unlikely it is. Story 17. Alzheimer's and dementia. Anything where you lose your memory or become a burden to your family. My dad has dementia, and it's a constant cycle of adapting to the new reality and then noticing a new or enhanced symptom and having to adapt to that. I think it feels like when old cartoon characters are walking over a cliff and keep on walking until they realize there's nothing under their feet anymore. I love my dad. He is only in his 50s, and I don't think he'll remember who I am when I get married. He doesn't know what chess is anymore, but he can play it really well. Dementia is a weird thing. Story 18. No one knows exactly how general anesthesia works to render someone unconscious. Also, no one knows why people die from anesthesia, although this complication is rare, which is why I refuse to be put under for anything because I'm convinced I'll be one of those rare deaths from it. I was put under for the first time ever a few months ago for surgery on a badly broken arm. I fought the F out of it, conceptually, existentially. When it came right down to it, though, I did end up shocked about one thing. I felt like I was making the choice to go to sleep, to just lay my head to the side, the same as when I'm at home and ate too much salty food and I'm just peaceful and lazy. And it felt exactly the same as drifting off like that on a lazy afternoon. In those moments when I was drifting off, I understood that what was happening wasn't just about being put under, but it was about fear of death. In my life before and since that surgery, I haven't experienced fear of danger. It's a strange quirk of mine for at least 10 years. But in the days leading up to my surgery, I did very much experience a dread of inviting the darkness, of allowing an anesthesiologist to pull me toward a state indistinguishable for me from obliteration. I know the rational part of me was tricked just a bit by the anti-anxiety meds they gave me an hour before surgery, but those didn't stop me from thinking and seeing that I could trust that experience. Whatever the reason, whatever they gave me or my state of mind, just before I went to sleep, I think it's by design that I felt like I made the choice for lights out. That's the way the anesthesia works, or at least the way it worked for me, and I think it was a great gift to my sense of being in the world to have experienced it. Story 19. It is possible that the universe exists at a false vacuum level, and at some point, anytime or anywhere vacuum decay could occur, sending a wave of destruction out in every direction. The only solace is that if it did occur, it would probably spread at no greater than the speed of light. So if it occurred in some other galaxy, humanity would be long gone before it reached here. Of course, that also means it could have already occurred in multiple places and at multiple times, and the universe is just being destroyed bit by bit. Story 20. The Carrington Event. In 1859, the sun spewed a huge amount of highly charged plasma that brushed against the Earth's magnetosphere and caused every electronic device on Earth to receive a huge electric shock. At the time, every electronic device on Earth consisted of a few telegraph machines. Some simply ran even while disconnected from their power supply for a while. Some melted. If an event like this were to happen today, we're overdue for one. It would pretty much destroy every single electronic device, including all of the infrastructure used to generate and distribute electricity. There would be widespread blackouts everywhere, and no way to contact anyone to call for help or find out what state the rest of the world is in, and no way to fix it other than recreating centuries' worth of scientific advancements by hand. Story 21. There is no upper limit on psychological pain. A person on fire will eventually pass out from the extensive damage and physical pain. But a person has no upper limit on anxiety, fear, depression, hopelessness, grief, worry, and so forth. What is more, we act as if there is a clear division between physical and psychological pain, but all pain is psychological. We have a nervous system in part so we can learn to avoid pain. This doesn't seem accurate to me. People pass out from fear all the time, and depression numbs people to their pain. And in general, very intensely painful emotions actually kind of move in waves. Plus, psychological pain is not really a discrete thing to begin with. I don't know. Just want to push a bit on the idea that people could hypothetically careen into an ever-escalating spiral of fear without a check or balance. Dissociation actually kind of functions in this precise way. I work in a psych unit, and even folks with extreme emotional pain kind of find a baseline for themselves most of the time, even if it doesn't look like others' baselines. Story 22. Lots of people don't just pass away quickly. A lot of times they experience their organs shutting off basically one by one. A common experience is your lungs filling with fluid and causing you to suffocate. Maybe death itself isn't too bad, as it is the ultimate piece of release from the suffering of life. The part I'm most afraid of is the process of dying and what it will all feel like. If I'm old and at the point where doctors are certain I cannot live much longer, I hope they come up with something that's not totally agonizing. Since that is many, many years in the future, it'll hopefully go smoothly with advancements in medicine and tech. Story 23. The fact that everyone literally has a 50-50 chance of getting some form of cancer at some point in their lives, and that there's an additional 50-50 chance you'll die from it. I am a hypochondriac anyway, but I've always been terrified of cancer from the day I learned what it was, especially because so many of them can be silent until you find a lump, and then suddenly you have months, weeks, days to live. It's unfair that you can literally be the healthiest you can possibly be, take care of every inch of your body, and not even have cancer in your family. But it doesn't matter, you can get it anyway. I truly feel like it's nature's cruelest way of controlling our population, almost like the Thanos of the universe. Story 24. False vacuum decay. We think the current vacuum state of the universe is stable, but there is a possibility that it is not stable. If at any location in the universe the vacuum state were to decay to a more stable state, it would destroy the universe. A shock wave traveling at the speed of light would expand outward and reset the vacuum state of everything it engulfed. Matter would disintegrate, and since it would be traveling at the speed of light, we wouldn't see it coming. We'd be going about our lives, and as the shock wave passed, we would suddenly longer exist in any form. There is no way to stop this if it happened, and we wouldn't even know it was happening until it hit us. Story 25. Huntington's disease is a rare genetic disease that is basically eating the brain out with no cure. Life expectancy is 15 to 20 years after diagnosis with severe mental conditions. To make matters even worse, this allele is dominant, always expressed if present, and is always passed to the children. So people with Huntington's cannot have children unless they harm them. Edit. It happens as a result of a mutation of a specific gene, so it may happen to anyone randomly. The odds are extremely low, though. Story 26. A single large nuclear weapon, if detonated at the right height in our atmosphere, could burn out every computer chip, every electrical transmission line, and every electrical component connected to any antenna or length of wire in over half of the United States. Instead of the Stone Age, half the USA would revert to the late 19th century in an instant. The existence and effect of electromagnetic pulse (EMP) electrical surge from an atmospheric nuclear blast is well known and not debated. Imagine every cell phone, ATM, car, computer chip, Peloton, POS, terminal traffic, signal, GPS, and Wi-Fi device was suddenly bricked and rendered useless. Imagine the entire electrical grid vaporized and every power pole transformer blown to bits. Imagine not just the time and effort needed to repair downed power lines, but the time and manufacturing needed to replace every burnt-out transformer and power line necessary to rebuild an electric grid from scratch. Imagine a city without power, no sewage pumps, no tap water pumps, no police or fire radios, no street lights, no ambulance radios, no computers to direct banks to pay vendors, no public service vehicles operational because they all rely on computer chips that are burned out. And imagine that there are no trucks to bring in what's needed. Transformers, power line, wire, food, insulin, baby formula bandages, newspapers, water replacement parts, vegetables, light bulbs, or cell phone tower electronics. The unbridled rioting, chaos, and violence that would follow scares me to my bones. Story 27. A massive pontine stroke, usually fatal, and when not survived with only some general loss of motor function. But occasionally, a stroke in the pons region completely disconnects higher brain functions from the body, leaving the victim fully conscious, but unable to produce any movement at all. The person is completely neurologically locked, can't even blink except by reflex, but is fully aware and undamaged cognitively. This gets missed from time to time, is assumed brain dead, and the victim will be put into care, fed, and hydrated for decades. There they would never be sedated or otherwise help screaming inside their own skulls.